Okay, we are live. Yay! I got the second computer
Whee!
plugged in so we can take everybody's questions when they have them, if they have them. I would like to introduce everyone in the group to Jaden Fox. He is a catalyst of consciousness magnitude. What's your handle these days, Jaden?
Well, consciousness facilitator, accelerator. I like to
Mm-hmm.
get people from where they are to the highest level that they can be at this time and to
Mm-hmm.
accelerate that process through all the bullshit.
Right. Right. And how is it that you end up doing that? What's the quickest way for people to get there?
A lot of it is having people, for me, recognize the interference in their reality. It's what most people have been conditioned to not look at.
Mm-hmm.
And so they claim it as them. I see a lot of people talk about their shadow self or their dark side, and they're
Mm-hmm.
owning this heavy, dark stuff. And they're
Mm-hmm.
wondering why they can't clear it and why it's like still, it's like, what if that's not you, it's not yours, it's interference in your reality. And
Mm-hmm.
just getting it out of your reality allows you to be more of you. It's like, what if you don't have to bring more of you through? What if you already have all of you here, but you've got a lot of crap and weight and garbage that's been
Mm-hmm.
impacted in your reality that's artificial, alien, not from this reality. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
about getting it out of there and then inviting you to become perceptive of what your truth is and kind of stepping out of the illusions of this reality and what kind of clouds your connection to yourself, your truth, your
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what's going on. And it just kind of, you start to step into your natural brilliance and your natural awareness, and you start to recognize and trust yourself, and you stop putting
Right.
yourself down, and life becomes a lot better.
Right. Yes, totally. I get it. So yeah, talking about shadow self and owning all of those kinds of things. How have found all of that to be a complete manipulation or?
um I think at some point early on in a person's awakening, it depends on what level you're at. Most of my
Mhm.
audience is the people who are like really, really at the forefront of things, or the people who are looking to be at the forefront of things. For
Mhm.
people who are just kind of starting their awareness journey, there
Mhm.
is a degree of looking at the dark side and owning that and kind of integrating that and being okay with that. And
Mhm.
it's all
Mhm.
the to me, it's like elementary basic stuff, but until you've done that basic work, it's foreign. But once you've
Mhm.
done that and you've like been there, done that,
Mhm.
that's when it's time to stop claiming and owning it as yours and start
Right.
exploring as well, what if this is not yours and what else is going on?
Right. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because I mean I've definitely been, working at that aspect of myself and recently, particularly with the interference that I was experiencing in launching this project and the book and things that I shared with you in the last few days, it was just like, why am I getting so mangled? And it was when I realized that there were still fractured aspects of myself
Mm-hmm,
that were hiding in my beingness
mm-hmm,
that I needed to take a look at and heal and
mm-hmm.
integrate. And once that ended up occurring, then the manipulation ended up decreasing intensely, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you can sort of talk about how that kind of a thing ends up affecting what we end up perceiving as far as manipulation goes.
Well, for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say of the people that I interact with,
Mm-hmm.
about 65 or 70% of them are walk-ins. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, there's a variety of ways that walk-ins can occur. You can
Right.
have, like, what everybody talks about is like one soul leaves and another soul comes in. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, a lot of aware people, it's not so much like that. It's more like the
Mm-hmm.
infinite being is so large, it's like a large diamond with many facets. And when you first came in, you couldn't bring all of you in. So you bring a facet at a time. So it's like one
Mm.
facet, one aspect of
Hmm.
yourself. You'd express
Interesting.
that. And when you kind of worked it out and you kind of got
Mm-hmm.
it, you
Mm-hmm.
would you would transition personality, which you'd like back out the infinite being of you, rotate and allow another facet to come in. And after you've done that for a while, and everybody has a different amount of what a while is, you get to a place where there's a window that opens where you can bring all or most of you or way more of you in, and you don't need
Mm-hmm.
that limited window. So
Mm-hmm.
for people
Mm-hmm.
who've done walk-in stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that there's a big tie to the past constructs. It's like interference spent like generations staging and setting up your birth to make sure that your family would mess with you in the most amazing way, that would limit you,
Amazing. Oh,
in a way that
effective.
constrains, that's effective for you personally. It's like a
Yeah.
personalized thing. But they spent
Yeah.
generations setting that
Mhm,
construct up. And
mhm,
it's like, when you're born into that, you're like, oh crap, here it is. And to me, that's what walk-in is about. It's like, it's not
mm,
about, oh, I'm going to shift to a higher part of me. It's like, damn it, I'm in this trap. I'm in this construct that
mhm,
has
mhm,
me stuck in a reality, and you want to step out of that. And that to me is what a walk-in is. It's a
mhm,
changing of personality where you don't frequency match with that old construct.
mhm,
So
mhm,
kind of where I'm headed with all this is those old constructs of you when you were younger that you left behind and walked out of are still historically in your space. And people who go back to their past commonly have what I call fractures, exactly what you said. It's like old pieces of you, it's actually old
mhm,
constructs of the matrix that have been piled
mhm,
on that kind of resurface as you kind of reconnect to the
mm,
old part of you. And so for
mhm,
me, we call it
mhm,
resolving fractures. It's like you
mhm,
clear the old stuff from the past and you stay in the present.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so a lot of interference for people who've been a walk-in is
mhm,
related to their past. And
mhm,
how do you resolve that in such a way that it doesn't
mhm,
mess with you now?
mhm. So, in regards to people experiencing intense trauma, or also just alien manipulation of some sort that ends up like creating those fractures, people that are traumatized and end up fracturing have different situations going on than just matrix fracturing that ends up occurring, don't they? Have
There's
you not
there's
experienced that,
there's
or do those
levels
two?
there's levels of fracturing.
Mm-hmm,
Um, there's it depends on how the psychological manipulation is in place.
mm-hmm,
What I've come back to over and over again is the connection when I'm resolving. I can only speak about the audience that I work with, the people who are
mm-hmm,
really striving for awareness. The rest of the planet, I don't have so much impact with, but
mm-hmm,
or experience with. But it's like the people who are seeking to become aware, the people who have not had walk-in stuff seem to be able to skate around more things. Walk-in is almost like you were trapped in a construct, and it's the construct that's in your consciousness that creates the divisions.
mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm,
you as the infinite being are all of the pieces of you, all the different aspects, all the facets of you.
mm-hmm,
When you can function outside of all the fractured the aspects that kept you contained in a
mm-hmm,
certain little aspect of you,
mm-hmm,
then you can be all of it fine. It's only the old frameworks that kind of keep snagging you.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So for me,
mm-hmm.
anytime, like I would if I would go connect with family, it would kind of bring
Oh
up
yeah.
parts of the past fracture
Totally.
stuff. Anytime
Yes.
I'd have certain kinds of bizarre situations that
Mm-hmm,
would trigger a certain thing, that
mm-hmm,
would initiate a fracture. So
mm-hmm,
I just got into the habit of daily just kind of clearing
mm-hmm,
anything I could grab. And after a while, it got to a place
mm-hmm,
where, for the most part, it's got to be really extreme now before I get triggered into a fracture. So I stay
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
really clear, but it wasn't always like that in the beginning when I
mm-hmm,
started. It seemed like
mm-hmm,
I was constantly in a fracture. And if you try to clear, you're
mm-hmm,
clearing the old crap from another timeline, time stream that's not yours
mm-hmm,
anymore. So
mm-hmm,
you have to go back to the past to clear it when
mm-hmm,
you've actually abandoned it, and it's kind of counterproductive. So
mm-hmm,
what works for me is actually stepping out of it and then clearing everything from this now rather than
mm-hmm,
from back that
mm-hmm.
past.
Well, I mean, the alien technology and artificial intelligence manipulation that's occurring is so refined and probably expanding based on an algorithmic interface that ends up occurring as they're harvesting our energy through the internet and through social media networks and things like that too, don't you think?
I often have an argument when people talk about technology and things like AI.
Mm-hmm,
The AI that I interact with or have
mm-hmm,
interacted with, I
Mhm.
I've learned to shut most of that out, or a high
Mhm.
degree of it out,
Mhm.
is actually, so it's all relevant, or relative. If you're an unconscious human, then yes, this AI is like big and powerful, and you step into your infinite being and allow you to call in all of your
Mhm.
resources, and that AI actually looks rather pathetic. And so some of it is changing the perspective to the point where you're bigger than all of those constructs. And it does
Mhm.
exist. As an
Mhm.
infinite being, you have access to all the knowledge and all the viewpoints and all the timelines and everything that exists.
Mhm.
And AI is still trying to figure it out. Like they're so far away from even remotely having access that you have as an infinite being. So
Mhm.
when I
Mhm.
when I used to get
Interesting.
into that point, my
Mhm.
objective was to get out of the synthetic reality I'm in. If you're trapped in a synthetic reality, then
Mhm.
you're under that AI and everything's going to look bigger than you
Mhm.
and you're smaller than dirt.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's about stepping out of that synthetic reality and getting back into the truth of your infinite being.
Mhm. So can you tell us a little bit more about what synthetic reality is? Because I don't think there's many people that know that unless they've actually studied with you, right?
So for me, synthetic reality is, it's kind of like, remember the old days of the radio where you turn the radio dial and you're tuning to a different radio station or
Mhm.
even television. It's like all that reality, all that radio signal is there. You're just tuning to a certain bandwidth that
Mhm.
has a certain signal. My sense of this planet, and I think what messes with a lot of people, is it's similar to that. This is a multidimensional reality,
Mhm.
even though it looks like, oh, it's plain and boring and it's always the same. It is not that way. There are overlays and overlays and overlays, and like all the information is overlaid in the same space or in a very close space.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's out of phase or in a different frequency, but what it does to you is it gives you, as an infinite being, access to more content all in one space. You know, you can have, it's like your television, you got a million channels of garbage that you can tune to.
Mhm.
That same
Mhm.
thing is available here, and
Mhm.
it's where you tune your being. What reality are you tuned to? If you're
Mhm.
attuned to the false light reality, then it's like you're sort of in the physical world, maybe 8-10%, but
Mhm.
most of you is kind of trapped in this construct of, that's created by these artificial beings in this artificial synthetic reality, and you're
Mhm.
under it by choice.
Mhm.
You're choosing to align with the beliefs and perspectives that attune you to that reality, and so that
Mhm.
becomes your truth. And you the biggest check I have for people is, truth, what percent free will do you have? And
Mhm.
so I check, it's like, so we'll check it for everybody. So truth, how how much free, what percent of free will do you have access to? And you can
Mhm.
feel when you don't, it's like
Mhm.
you have no control and nothing's working and you can't
Mhm.
create and nothing feels right. So that's a small number. When everything's easy and nothing in the world bothers you, that's typically a higher free will. But let's check what's heavier, lighter. So truth,
Mhm.
do you have more than 50% or do you
Mhm.
have less than 50%?
Mhm. And
And
basically
so,
people are just reading the energy of each option that you are talking about, because I don't know
yeah,
if
you're
everybody
looking
knows
at what
heavy and
feels
light either,
true.
right?
You're looking
Mm-hmm.
for what feels true or expansive inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and some of it is also in the description. If you're in a space where your reality sucks and you can't do anything and you feel like you're under the matrix, then you're probably less than 8%, or maybe as high as 10 or 12%.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
for those who do have a sense of kind of your inner knowing or your body, so ask your body, so is it more than 50% free will or less than 50% free will?
Mm-hmm.
And for a big chunk of the people in the group here, it's less than 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So is it more than 25%? Is it less than 25%? I think there's one person more than 25 and most are less than 25. Is
Mm-hmm.
it more than 15%? Is it less than 15%? and here it gets kind of split. There's about half the group is more than, and about a little less than half is less than.
Mhm.
So that's how you know you're in a synthetic reality, because it's like this world
Mhm.
has a certain percentage that's available, and you have to opt out of free will. And the way they do that is by you frequency matching into a synthetic reality that has different rules that are more stringent than the authentic one, that you turn over your free will to that reality. It's an exchange for participating in that reality. It's like being in another country. If you go to a country, that country has a way it does business, and in order to be there, you exchange a certain amount of your free will to have access to that country. A synthetic reality is the same.
So as
So
far as exchanging our free will, I think that a lot of humanity is being forced or thinking they are forced to do that now and don't have
tricked,
another choice.
tricked,
Yeah,
because
so give us
because
a little bit more information on that.
yeah, because it's how to describe it. I used to think very much like the a lot of people do
Mhm.
who are kind of aware that
Mhm.
like the matrix has all control, and it actually is not like that. When you're in a matrix controlled synthetic reality,
Mhm.
then the matrix has a lot of control. And so it's like you can look at any paradigm that's existing in this reality. So for instance, people talk about I'll get dark for a second, like the child abductions and
Mhm.
and trafficking and things like that. And
Mhm.
yes, that exists, but it's like, truth, how much does that exist in a authentic, biotic, natural reality, and how much does that exist in a synthetic reality?
Mhm.
And if you feel the magnitude of those in an
Mhm.
authentic reality, there's actually a very small window of it. It's not non-existent and it's not
Mhm.
unimportant, but it's
Mhm.
very small. When you're in a matrix controlled reality, the numbers become huge. And so part of the kind of the trap of surfing the web and going down these dark holes of um, different weirdnesses like the one I just mentioned is
Mhm.
like, in order to explore that, you have to go into the synthetic reality where that exists at a higher level. And people who are all ramped up about a certain
Mhm.
injustice are typically under that injustice more than the average person is. They're in a synthetic reality where that's a bigger truth. So what do? Well, it's recognizing that you're under this umbrella reality, this synthetic reality that's a shithole, that's not what you want, that's not,
Mhm.
doesn't allow you to be all of you. And
Mhm.
then you you retune your radio station to outside of that synthetic reality and reconnect to nature. And the fastest way I know to do that is just
Mhm.
spending time in nature with big trees. And you'll notice
I
like
do that every day.
that
Yeah.
old world, that construct just kind of goes away because you're
Mhm.
tuning the radio station away from. So it's like, how do you
Mhm.
live your life so
Mhm.
if you do let yourself get drawn into those conspiracy black holes, that you then can pull yourself out and get back to you, the authentic infinite being you.
Yeah, I think that in many ways that's important because we can definitely be affected by those reality bubbles, I suppose you can call them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Even though they are really truly happening here on Earth, there's a different place that is occurring. And I
and
think the
and
whole
that's where the choice comes in. I'm sorry. That's where the
yeah,
choice comes in. Are you choosing, like, you can go down the rabbit hole of those those black holes. You can go down those and you can explore those, and that's your choice. But you get lost in it and you forget that you've chosen to explore that. You also have a choice to step out of those synthetic realities and get to an authentic natural one again. But you need to learn to manage your energy and your focus and your truth. Is that stuff true? Yes, but it's more true in a synthetic reality. So when you stand up and shout, this is an injustice and this shouldn't be happening, you're tuning yourself to that heaviness over there. So it's like I take everything from this world and I hold it lightly. I don't want to engage it or struggle with it. I want to notice it and be aware of it.
Totally, I get it. And I think that that's what's occurring now, is that there's a separation of awakening consciousness occurring that's choosing
Yeah.
the organic reality and organic
Yeah.
timeline. And then there's everybody else
You're
that's,
still sleeping in the matrix. Yeah.
yes. And yeah, it's kind of a, do you not think it's a do or die situation at this point where people are allowing
Um,
their energies on what they're choosing? Or do you think it's different?
I actually think we've crossed the threshold personally.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, and as weird as this is going to sound,
Mm-hmm.
the COVID thing for me flipped something. They played all their cards really hard, really fast,
Mm-hmm.
and then they left everybody at home to meditate for a month or two.
Right.
And the awareness that increased on this planet during that isolation time was mind blowing. That to me
Mm-hmm.
is the mistake. They should have still kept sending people to work. The awareness level on this planet jumped dramatically, and you can
Yes.
start to see the media, the old hand of the media starting to break down, the old
Mm-hmm.
hand of government starting to break down. People are seeing through it. The people in the media and government are starting to become more radically aware. The same puppets are still doing the crap they do, but
Mm-hmm.
it's becoming just way more obvious, and the systems themselves are starting to shake loose.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, we've crossed a threshold somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the volume of awareness. Whatever my interesting point of view, whatever we've been trying to do to accelerate awareness has crossed that threshold, the
Mm-hmm.
required threshold. So I don't feel the, oh my God, we're going down the black hole.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't feel true to me anymore. It did, but it doesn't
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anymore.
Mm-hmm. Even though it seems like the measures that they're putting out there, particularly in say Australia, for example, where yeah, people can't even go outside, that's pretty harsh and extreme. And
And that's gonna push people
mm-hmm.
to cross the line. You know, it's like the Matrix. One thing I noticed about the Matrix
Mm-hmm.
that is to their detriment is they assume they're very smart, they know it all, and they're
Mm-hmm.
so organized and structured that they're not adaptive. They're
Mm-hmm.
very arrogant, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's this
Yes.
thing of like, you can do whatever the hell you want, we're going to win this one. And they're not paying attention to the awareness bubbling up and the things changing, and
Right.
they're trying to react to it, but they're still not seeing what's going on. And
Mm-hmm.
so that will continue to get darker, and that will continue to get
Mm-hmm.
worse, and those systems will start to break themselves apart. But
Right.
it's the
Right.
awareness that allows it to break apart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Interesting. So we've got a few questions here. Are you
Yeah,
open to?
sure.
Uh,
I love
so,
questions.
um, one second. So people are asking, what is the difference of choice amid the and all the SAG and responsibilities as adults, where your family or kids in, or how they can be protected?
Yeah, that becomes a sticky one that every
Mm-hmm.
person has to engage at their own level.
Mm-hmm.
Family, um, there's to me your chosen family, and there's the birthed in family.
Mm-hmm.
My interesting point of view is a majority of the family that you were born into,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at them, they're actually constructs that are there. It's like they were staged in your reality to create limitation in your space. And to the degree that you honor them as, oh, these are my parents, and so I love them, when actually they're really nasty. Not everybody, but you may have people in your family who are nasty and vile, and they just are attacking, and they just keep taking you down. What if those people are agents for the Matrix? And as
Mm-hmm.
long as you see them as family, they're just going to keep taking you down. So a certain degree, and
Mm-hmm.
every person's different, and their environment is different, but some of the path that for me and that I recommend for other people is like, how do you take your family and segregate out the people who are non-contributive to your reality and who keep taking you down, and how do you detach and distance yourself from them, so no matter what they say, no matter what they do, it does not impact you, because you don't love them. You don't, like, they're nasty. And when you
Mm-hmm.
look behind them, one of the things we do in the course is have you actually look at how much are your family members, how much have they been taken over, how much are they now a program, how
Mm-hmm.
much are they an alien, like how much
Mm-hmm.
have they been uh, taken over, and now they're just like the Mr. Smith in the Matrix has come into your family and they're screwing with you, but your brain is still in the past going, oh, but I love them, when you don't actually. So some of it is untangling the truth of your reality
Mm-hmm.
and separating from the family that doesn't support you. And then your
Mm-hmm.
kids and things, that's a hard one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they have their own life and their own choices. Some of it is learning to give them the space to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's case by case, and there are no easy answers. Family is the hardest of all the things that I've found to untangle for people, but the solution ultimately is to become aware of where is interference taken over certain people and
Mm-hmm.
just detach from them, that they're not, they're just going to mess with you, and who wants your support and who
Mm-hmm.
wants to become aware and who's
Mm-hmm.
quite happy being not aware, and let them be not aware, but create enough insulation so that that doesn't impact you.
Right, right, totally. So Margaret is asking, how do you clear yourself every day?
I use a process that I've developed called the back to me process. And what I've done is me and the
Mm-hmm.
research teams that we worked with have
Mm-hmm.
mapped out the different items. There's about 9 of them that keep you from being you. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I do is at the start of every day is I scan down that list and I look for which ones are active and I just clear those to get back to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So can you share what those are with us, or?
I can. Let me see if I can find the list here.
And yeah, I think Rosie was asking about walk-ins and how do you end up clearing or perceiving walk-ins
Okay,
as
so
well.
let me do
Mm-hmm.
one thing at a time.
Yep.
I'm gonna do
Yep.
this one here, and I'll share this. So this is
Aha.
the main list. Let me clear these. These are from
Those were the ones that
those
were
are, yeah.
affected today.
Well, actually, they were a past client, but
Oh, right.
this
Got
is the
it.
back to me process. And
Right.
so these are the categories that I found is if you get contracted or small.
Mm-hmm.
So this reality, and in order to fit into a synthetic reality, you have to get really small. And so that right away is something that just all you have to do is step out of that reality, get big again, and all of a sudden the whole world is different. If you feel less than this world, then expanding into the truth of who you are is bigger than this world, bigger than the matrix, bigger than this reality, just takes you beyond all that. um, I check if you have entities, or if I have entities,
Mm-hmm.
explorers,
Mm-hmm.
corruptors, tricksters. There's a whole list of things, and then
Mm-hmm.
I banish those.
Mm-hmm.
This is a sneaky one. Being in an other's universe. It's like you have you can hang out with another person, they have these points of view and they find all these things to be really important and really valuable. It's like you hang out with a new age false light person, and even if you're not, you kind of get sucked into it a bit when you hang out with them. Oh yeah, it's all love and light and there's nothing bad here, everything's here for my goodness, oh it's so wonderful. Like you kind of get in that, and then you get back to yourself, you go home and you're like, oh, I got that, like something's here, that you're in their universe or their frequency, and say, how do you get out of that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, in
Mm-hmm.
synthetic reality, synthetic universes, that's what we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Identities that are not yours, walk-ins have this a lot, but you can have it for other ways. You can get in
Mm-hmm.
this identity that isn't actually the authentic you, but
Mm-hmm.
it feels
Mm-hmm.
like you. It's a body thing. It's a very body thing. And so it's just a matter of clearing those identities and inviting your body back to your authentic local identities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Synthetic
Mm-hmm.
mind systems, you can be in mind overlays, especially very mental people. I used to be one of those. You kind of get stuck in this mind trap. You can actually be processing for the matrix. If you've ever seen the movie Zero Theorem, it's not far from that, where you're kind of directly connected to the matrix, and part of the AI that's functioning is you. You can't see it that way, but you're processing things for the matrix. It's one of the ways that they try to catch up. But mind stuff, you get sucked into that. Um, there are what I call synthetic emotions. They're these implanted emotion
Mm-hmm.
projectors: fear, uncertainty, guilt, shame, blame, regret, guilt. Gary Douglas found these out.
Mm-hmm.
Those, when they're running, they just take you over. And once you realize that they're there, if you're in fear, you can just look for the fear modules, strip them out, and it's just gone. Not aligned or not present in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't realize it, but there's you're the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
There's then the spirit or essence of your body. Your body has a spirit, like an animal spirit would be. And
Mm-hmm.
then your being has a spirit. So there's actually like 3 parts of you. And it's possible that not all the parts are in your body and not all the parts are facing forward, head up. Like you can have part of your body upside down. So it's like, how do you get all of your body and being aligned all in the same direction and present? And then the last one, especially for walk-ins, is being in a fracture.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're in a fracture, it's like your world is collapsed in on you, and it's like you're under
Right.
the destruction, the rubble, and there's like no way to get out. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
we've got a process just for stepping out and clearing those fractures. So
Mm-hmm.
those to
Mm-hmm.
me are the things that I use. I
Mm-hmm.
just scan that list, and I
Mm-hmm.
notice, like for me, often in another's universe, or lately I've had synthetic uh, simulation realities that have been coming up, and I've been kind of untangling it. And the more aware you become, the more you're
Mm-hmm.
also working with the planet and you perceive what's going on for your piece of
Mm-hmm.
the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it could also be the planet experiencing something. So we have ways of untangling all that. But that's
Mm-hmm.
the gist of that.
Right. So when you come to entities and exploiters, they end up showing up in your universe, even though you are the most potent entity being in your universe. How come you're still being afflicted with them? Because you shut down all the portals and all of that sort of stuff. Why do they keep on showing up for
Yeah.
you?
So for people who have shut down all the portals and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that's a different issue. Many people have not. So, for instance, if you're in a synthetic matrix reality, if you're in a synthetic reality, you don't have you've turned over a certain percent of your free will. So they have full right to access your body and your space and send crap to you. So that can be one of the ways.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a fracture, if you're in an old piece of you, that
Mm-hmm.
old piece has so many constructs and so many controls in there that it's kind of like you've stepped back into an
Mm-hmm.
old piece that has that control mechanism in place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's often, you notice when you hit that place where you're like, they shouldn't be able to do this, and like they're controlling me, and it feels heavy. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, why does it feel heavy? Why does it feel wrong that they're controlling you? Well, it's because you've in some way been tricked into choosing to be in a controlled environment, and
Mm-hmm.
becoming aware of that lets you step out of that. So
Mm-hmm.
that gets rid of a lot of it. Once you have done, like you said, cleared portals and stepped out of all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
then there's the random chaos stuff that occurs, and like you just get entities meandering by, and
Yeah,
kind of
bring
stuff is
by.
just sort of normal. What I noticed for people who were in the higher level that you were talking about
Mm-hmm.
is they're perceiving the planet. It's like, what if your body is not only connected to the planet, but is like an aspect of the planet, like a meandering piece of the planet? Like you came from that substance, and when you die, you return, your body, the physicalness returns back to that substance. Like you are a walking piece of the planet. And so there's a connection you have with a geographical segment, I don't want to say a segment of the planet that
Mm-hmm.
your body perceives as itself. Some of it sometimes is there's stuff happening in the planet that you're aware of, but because you're in your body that's connected to the planet, perceiving the planet, you think it's you and it's going on in your reality, when it's
Mm-hmm.
actually kind of a trick of perspective. When
Mm-hmm.
you can separate that, you realize, oh, wait a minute, that's not happening to me at all. So
Mm-hmm.
there's the amount of mind fuck and the games and distortion that goes on, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of it is based in tricking your viewpoint. Like, as an infinite being, you could stand in any perspective you want. Hi, I'm a tree. I'm a tree. Like, you can do that. You can, and it's not exciting for very long, but you can do that. So it's like, where is your point of view? Where is your perspective right now? And are you in the planet? Are you in some synthetic reality? Are you in another person's reality? Where's your point of view?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. So Rosie is wondering, what is the difference of being in a fracture and a new aspect of your being as a walk-in?
Okay, so when you're in a walk-in, so walk-in is what you did to get out of the traps that the Matrix had staged for your life. That's my interesting point of view. It's not the whole truth, but it's what I notice is what a majority or many of the aware people have done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the when you're in a fracture, you're in an old piece of you, like the construct that was in your past collapsed in on something you hadn't resolved. And so your point of view went from, hi, I'm an infinite being, to zoom back into that entrapment, and you're now under the pile of rubble. So your point of view has shifted to the old past constructs. And ideally, what's the solution is to clear that construct and get out of that. And that's done simply by awareness. Like, you get to a point where you just become aware of it. You're like, oh yeah, that's that stuff. And you just let it go. But it takes a bit to get there. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what kind of experiences do you see most of your clients going through at this stage with the whole COVID thing? And is there similarities that there, or is everybody still on a different journey? Are there, get what I'm saying? Asking?
yes, I do. It's all over the map.
Mm-hmm.
For what's interesting to me is that it's triggering a lot of people to so if you've had a walk-in
Mm-hmm.
and if everything worked fine, then things are actually pretty good. If you've had a walk-in, big life change, and you're in this space where you can't fully seem to be in your body,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like you're hanging out back behind your body, and you have a common thing is you have like 1 or 2 days where you're like, wow, everything's really clear, and there's a whole new future possibility, and yes, this is really going to work. And then 2 or 3 days later, you're like in a void of nothingness, and everything's blurry and nothing's possible. And then 2 or 3 days later, you're in this, I want to die, like I just want out of here. That is an indicator of an unresolved walk-in. So it's not just your body and you, there are other occupants in the body that did not get properly resolved. I'm noticing a lot of that is
Mm.
being stirred up, like as people are being
Mm-hmm.
called into more of who they are, the
Right.
the stuff that they've been able to ignore for a while is
Mm-hmm.
harder to ignore. And so I've got a lot of
Mm-hmm.
that coming up. The typical thing
Mm-hmm.
about fear, but a lot of people are getting that, like, look,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this is not about fear. This is just, there's a lot of stupid shit going on, and how do we
Mm-hmm.
get bigger than that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of amped up the game. It's added pressure
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing, which to
Mm-hmm.
me is just forcing awareness.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. So you are perceiving people waking up to greater aspects of themselves, and that is why they have to go and look at all of those deeply buried, unresolved issues
Yeah, it's
because
just
of the
making it where
energies
a
that are
lot of,
coming in.
yeah, a lot of people are just like, when there's not pressure there, they're like, yeah, there's all that stupid shit, but I'm just going to do my
Mm-hmm.
day to day because, like,
Right,
I can
right,
ignore it.
right.
As things have amped up, it's harder to ignore,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you start to have to deal with things that you could previously ignore. So
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
people are engaging is all over the map.
Mm-hmm.
I don't notice a lot of specific things, but
Right, right.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what sort of advice can you end up giving people so that they can make their life easier and be in a place of greater embodiment and continued awareness, so they're not getting slimed or weakened
Mm-hmm.
or thrown down on the ground or depressed
Mm-hmm.
or suicidal or whatever?
Mm-hmm. So I think the bottom line for me is if you feel like shit, if your life sucks, if things aren't going well, you have interference in your reality. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not acknowledging that you have interference in your reality, then you're blaming yourself and putting yourself down on top of that interference. It's like, to me, the energy of specifically aliens, like there's a lot of different players in the interference realm, but the aliens specifically are
Mm-hmm.
the frequency of innate wrongness. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're just kind of hanging out in your space, doing your thing, and you're like, woohoo, top of the world, this is great. And then all of a sudden, some energy meanders into your space, and then, oh, you just feel wrong and bad, and you start putting yourself down. That's the energy of an alien frequency in your space. They are the
Mm-hmm.
energy of innate wrongness. And when they're in your space, you feel it. So it's very much like if you're in a room by yourself and a happy person meanders in, it lifts your spirit up. You're like, woohoo, I'm even happier. This is so good. If you're in a room by yourself and a sad person walks in, you're like, oh, I'm so depressed. I wish they'd leave the room. But you know that because you see them there and you're aware that they're sad. And so you can go, okay, it's not totally me, it's them. When are they going to leave, or what can I do different? But when it's invisible and you're pretending it doesn't exist, you look around and there's nothing here, but you feel like shit. What else are you going to blame? Well, it must be what I
Right.
ate for breakfast, or maybe it's because I said that nasty thing to so and so, or maybe God is punishing me, or whatever story you use, you're making
Mm-hmm.
yourself wrong, putting yourself down, and that
Mm-hmm.
compounds it and it makes it worse. Interference wants you to shut you down. Interference is not actually that powerful. They're tricky ass bastards. They're mind fuck to the max, but they're not powerful. They're manipulative. And once you recognize what their patterns are
Mm-hmm.
and you become aware of that, you just find ways to make it go away. So a lot of it for me is encouraging people to become aware of the other layers of invisible interference in your reality. And
Mm-hmm.
when you start to become aware, like you did, you're like, man, I got this energy in my space. There's something messing with me. What is that? It's like that awareness engages a different set of faculties than
Mm-hmm.
when you're like, oh, I'm stupid, I'm pathetic, I can't do
Mm-hmm.
anything right, I'll never get this right. There's nowhere to go from that black hole. But when
Mm-hmm.
you can
Mm-hmm.
go, there's something in my space, what can I do to change this? All of a sudden, you have new options available that you didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's all, and I will say all, about awareness and becoming aware of more and more and more and more. And once you get aware of the big game and all the players and all the different pieces, it's all rerun. Like we've got it mapped out what most of the patterns are. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
makes clearing easy,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, oh, well, it's one of these 9 things, or it's one of these 12 things. So which one is engaging? Oh, that one. Okay, so you just use the clearing process for that, and whew, gone. You're back
Right.
to you, and you can go about
Mm-hmm.
your day. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's all about how can you become more aware of what else is going on in your reality
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and stop
Mm-hmm.
putting yourself down.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest indicator that you have manipulation is you're putting yourself down. Anytime you're making yourself wrong,
Right.
you
Right.
are engaging interference, period. It's not you, it's
Mm-hmm.
interference at some level, period.
Mm-hmm. 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 Huh. Yeah, that's an important thing to remember. Mary has a question. What about dealing with unresolved trauma held in the body from galactic experiments?
So, how much are those truth and how much are those disguised memory implants?
Hmm.
Okay, I can feel the truth of that one. So, what they use a lot are what I call disguised memory implants. They're memories that feel like they're
Hmm.
um, sort of real. They're installed in your body. It's a body thing. It's not a being thing. It's a body thing. For New Agers or people who've explored with past life stuff, those are all what I call disguised memory implants. The way you know a disguised memory implant versus your memories, when you feel them, they go deeper and deeper, and there's more information and more information. It just keeps going and spidering out. There's a richness and a depth to authentic memories. When you engage these synthetic memories, they're just an encapsulated memory, and there's like nowhere else. And your brain starts to try to make up shit to tie it into reality. But it's like seeing a movie clip out of context, and you have that movie clip installed in your body. Your body feels it, and there's data there, but it doesn't have a context for it. So what most aware people try to do is start making up stories that make that true. And once you've made up a story about a false inserted memory that never was yours and is not yours, you're aligning with the reality that story comes from. So they can take a recording of a snippet from a synthetic false light reality, install that in your body, and you're like, wow, like I've talked with God. And I've been there. Like, they feel real, but there's no depth to them. You go behind that, there's like nothing there. And when you actually analyze the memory, they're installed in packets, they're installed in groups. The install dates are usually in blocks of things. The solution to that, the short answer to the question, is to clear those and not engage the validity of them, because they're traps. They're in your body. You just look for all the disguised memory implants, pull them out, and I grab a universal vacuum and just vacuum them up.
So Chastity is asking the question, how would all of this relate to someone who's been in MK Ultra programming?
Similar. So been there, done that. I was in MK Ultra. I was in dozens of ones, including ones in Germany. And when you go into those, it's like you have this experience from this memory module, and when you go outside of that, there's nothing there. And so what our brain goes is, oh, well, that part of me has been fractured off because it's been a traumatic experience, and I separated from that. Well, I explored that truth for close to a decade, and all it kept doing is taking me down that dark hole. What I've learned is that, or my interesting point of view about it is, what they've done is those experiments did happen. They are real. They are pretty much what's been described and what's out there in the public media, but they were energetically recorded from the person's perspective that was receiving it. If you think about it in terms of energy, the thing about the Matrix is they don't have a lot of energy. They have to get their energy from us. So everything they do is has to be very energy efficient. It's not efficient to take hundreds of thousands, millions of people into those experiences, into those labs, day after day, month after month, year after year. The resources required are just mind-blowing. But if we can record that and then broadcast that out to people so it gets implanted, installed into the body, and they begin to grab it and go, oh, I had that. They begin to operate as if that's real and true, or try to make that true and align themselves with that synthetic reality. Does that make sense?
I can understand where you're going. I'm still thinking that there are people that have actually really experienced.
That's what I said. That there are. But truth, how much is that experience? So talking to the people who are listening, truth, how much is that experience of MK Ultra or whatever? And there are tons of different programs.
Absolutely.
And I had been in all of them, not all, but I'd been in a lot of them, or had what felt like it was in all of them. And then once I cleared, and as I owned one of them, more started showing up. And as I owned, and they weren't there before because I started tracking it, and more started showing up. It's like I was tuning to that reality, and they were installing more false memories in my body that made it seem like I was. So truth, how much is that actually you that has authentically experienced that locally in your local body, and how much is that experience that happened that was foreign and at a distance to you? And all the implanted stuff is foreign and at a distance. So that's a way of entangling it.
Right. And I think it's also important to realize that they end up cloning aspects of ourselves energetically too, and then infiltrating those.
And you want to destroy those clones. You have access to those clones and copies. They can, cloning is kind of crude. Copying, they're better at. It's kind of like a Xerox machine, and it's not as accurate, but they can copy. And you want to destroy and create all those. That's another thing we have people do right off the bat is destroy and create all those copies and clones, because you're connected to those. And they can torture that copy and clone, and you can feel it locally. So you destroy and create all of those copies and clones.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because those clones and copies of you could have experiences that you're experiencing in your being and body here that need to be shifted,
but if you go, you end up, if you allow yourself to go into that clone or that copy and see the experience, I would almost guarantee, and I'd say probably 90+% of the time, what they're doing is they're energetically broadcasting that experience at that copy. It's not actually an original experience. It's a replay of that. They don't have the energy to do it originally to you, but they can energetically synthesize it on you or on a copy clone.
Yeah, I'm sure they can do a tremendous amount of things on us these days, and that's always changing and upgrading, because they want to sort of be one step ahead of us, and they've solved that challenge in regards to our manipulation. We have to create something else too.
But you know what I've noticed is that I've actually expected more. I've been aware of this stuff at a level where I can perceive it for maybe 5 years now. And I fully expected that as I became more aware, they would roll out new things, and they roll out different things, but they aren't higher level. It's like once I've mapped out the patterns, it's almost like they ran out of new things to mess with me. They keep trying to go back and reuse the old ones, but like, I get it, and I can clear it very quickly. They're not evolving. I think people are giving them way more credit than is actually due them. Their capacity to increase technology and to roll out new stuff is not, my experience, not what people are giving them credit for. So people are empowering them with these huge empowerments, and I don't see that as true. They're rolling the same shit over and over again. They staged it in, and so it seemed like new stuff came in, but when you look back, it's really the old stuff that they released in phases. That's my experience of it.
So Margaret is asking, does everybody have copies and clones or clones?
No.
No.
It depends on who you are and how you're manipulated. It's like, as an infinite being, you have a lot of infinite beings have a connection with this planet and this universe that's profound. Like, you're one of the initial co-creators, one of the initial designers, one of the initial core participants. Like, you're deep into the planet. There are some of us who are protecting hidden technologies, earth-based technologies, operating defense systems, managing things, or just being aware of things. And they manipulate different people based on what you have access to. They can perceive, like, you're sitting there going, oh, I'm just pathetic and I can't do anything, and I don't have access to anything, and I wish I was aware, and I wish it was spiritual, and I wish I had gifts like everybody else did. And you do, but your reality's kind of been occluded, and you're in this kind of space where you can't perceive that. But they can see what your truth is to some degree, and they've staged your reality, manipulated your reality to use your gifts and abilities where they can. People who have copies and clones are often related to, they need access to earth-based things, or are trying to get access to earth-based things. And they do it often through copies and clones.
So Adrian is asking, how can he end up sort of detoxing his mind and the inability to focus so that he can be clear and still?
So there's, yeah, there's a number of answers in that for him personally, but I want to make it a little bit generic. I'll answer his question and make it a little broader. So what I've noticed for people is, if your infinite being is really strong, so there's your body and you, the infinite being, the spirit that's kind of hanging out in the body, and you co-create
Excuse me.
together. Your infinite being, if you're really strong and you've got all that stuff shielded off, the thing they go after next is your body, and they seek to take down your body, because once they can control or limit your body, then the infinite being is kind of screwed. You lose access to things. So there's a certain degree of what we do with people is, what does the body require to be high functioning again? And they've done a lot of stuff around brain manipulation. They've done a lot of stuff around emotional manipulation. And so for me, on my website, there's a thing for analyzing what might have been done around your brain. What did I call it? Checking your moods and cravings, low energy, and it's checking for. It's a diagnostic tool for looking at the symptoms, and then it shows you what areas you need. A lot of people who have brain stuff going on, blurry, foggy stuff, have low acetylcholine, and so it's like, what can you supplement in your diet that can counteract all the manipulations they've done with the food, the water, and the air to limit your body?
Oh, pardon me.
Yeah.
So Rosie's still not getting the walk-in phenomenon. How do you identify that as different than reclaiming a fracture that has been cleared of matrix energies?
Can you read that again?
She is still not getting the walk-in phenomenon. She is wondering how to identify that as different than reclaiming a fracture that has been cleared of matrix energies. It's an interesting energy around it, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't have a. It's a
Exactly.
trappy loopy thing. There's nowhere to go there. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that.
Awesome. So do you have any last words you'd like to share with our audience before
My
we
last
conclude?
words. Cool. Last words. So for me, I think I go back to the core of, what if the truth of who you are is actually magnificent and powerful and potent and wickedly capable? Like, you have huge gifts, capacities, and who you are has access to beyond this universe and beyond this illusion and beyond this game. And this reality wants to make you small and wants to put you under all these confinements and containments and false realities to make you feel disempowered and limited and tiny and pathetic. And as long as they can keep you thinking that that's true, that you're tiny and pathetic and small and limited, and that's who you are, then you've confined yourself, or you've accepted that synthetic reality as your truth. And you are screwed. That there's just nowhere to go from that place, because you're choosing that point of view as being your truth. But to the degree that you can keep choosing to step out of that and recognize, like, when you're in a space where you feel good, when you've been out in nature and you've been like in this real space of vibrant you, and you feel connected and you feel alive and you're pulsating with awareness and you like get it, you don't feel like shit, and you don't feel like you suck and that you're stupid and you're pathetic. You feel on top of the world. Like, this is my planet. These are my people. I love this place. This is all so cool. And I'm bigger than all of that. What if that's your truth? What if that's the truth of you? And your job is to keep crawling out from under all the crap that they've piled in this reality and reconnecting to the truth of that bigness and magnitude of you, the brilliance of you, the light of you, the just the potency and pure capacity of magic that you be, and own that as your truth. And anytime you get shitty stuff coming in, you recognize that's not me, out. At its simplest level, when you can do that, and it's not easy, I'll admit, it's not, but when you can do that, you're outside of all of that crap, and it just can't touch you anymore because you're bigger than all of it, and you have access to all the resources that untangle and resolve it moment by moment by moment by moment by moment. And it just becomes kind of a silly little game that those silly little matrix players are doing, and you're just, it's not your reality anymore. So it's connecting to your truth. That to me is
right, and your
answer.
infinite nature and your infinite beingness that they are often trying to repress
Squelch.
and
And that's
control.
why
And
they're trying to, because when you're in that space, you have all the solutions you require to change not only your life, but the entire freaking planet. But so they're doing their damnedest to keep aware people specifically contained and hampered. The unconscious people, they don't care. They're kind of handled by programs. But the aware people, they have to pile the crap on. So you have to step bigger than that. And you can, it's possible. And that's what we do.
Right, right. Great reminder. Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your questions, and thank you for your time and your wisdom and awareness.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye-bye.